frame control in meetings is always important. You're the person who's leading the meeting. If they're leading, you're losing because you want to predict emotions. Client facing being a proxy for first perceptions. So I'll start with some basic things as related to account management that are really important. I think that a lot of people focus on the nature of how to communicate and what to communicate, which of course are all critical, but the actual journey begins well before that. So account management is client facing effectively. So it's useful to think as, even in a remote environment, client facing being a proxy for first perceptions or first judgments. So that then relates to a couple of things. So number one, making sure that you've got congruency online. So what I mean by that is first name, last names where possible, or obviously stating your job title, but making sure that it's consistent across email, across your messaging platforms that you use. So when you're communicating with clients, think about all of the touch points. It's going to be WhatsApp, there's going to be email, there's going to potentially be LinkedIn because they might look you up on LinkedIn or connect with you. And obviously there's also the calls. So just make sure you've got consistent naming conventions across all of them. So do look at where you haven't, look at your LinkedIn profiles to make sure, are they professional or are they representation of the work that you do? So that also extends to, just to give you an example, we have Gina who works in our accounts team and she's a tax advisor, but she's got on her LinkedIn profile, which is technically accurate, that she used to work, for example, I think as a waitress somewhere. And I said, you probably should remove that from your profile because people don't want to work with a tax advisor who was previously a waitress, even if you were a waitress 5 years ago. So think about perception. It does make a difference to how people literally perceive you. People want to have the perception they're working with a senior individual. Everyone does. You want to feel like you're working with someone who's experienced. So make sure that's reflected. So think about then all of your platforms that you communicate upon and make sure that they're just professional and aligned. Number two, that then also, of course, relates to how you turn up to calls. So there's a general rule of thumb. So I would avoid, where you can, turning up to calls in t-shirts alone. T-shirts give a indie vibe, as in I'm an independent producer, freelancer, developer. They don't give a professional vibe. Of course, you can mirror clients, but it's safer in that context to just lean or err towards more professional than less. So I would avoid t-shirts and I would stick with shirts or jumpers in that context. Again, the rules can change a little where you're clearly someone who's just older. If you're look so the rule of thumb is if you look younger, skew towards looking older. If you're older, it doesn't make as much of a difference necessarily. So these things, of course, are important and stuff that we've discussed previously. And then, of course, we've spoken about the importance of a professional background. I don't like turning up to calls where people have backgrounds that are the Google Meet or Zoom autofills. Kill all of that. Get proper backgrounds. Get proper cameras. Get proper recording equipment. So this is stuff that, whilst is obvious, people obviously don't do it because you can think about your own calls and reflect upon, am I making that consistent? And all of this just relates to perception because it all matters as soon as someone has challenges because they think, okay, well, is this the right person? Is this person professional and senior? The reason is that because as you develop through your career, you tend to figure these out along the way, if that makes sense. Like, well, of course, it's not even something that we discuss anymore. So let's keep just going down the line in terms of things that then become important. So then I would say that in terms of other things that are important, if we just extend it out at a technical level, good RAM, good machine, good boot load time, you should not use your own reference point. You should benchmark it against someone who has or considered to be extremely productive within the business. Because often happens is that people use themselves to reference what the standard is. And generally speaking, when it comes to effective work within any role, look towards the person who's the most successful in that position, or look to someone who's since progressed from that position. So they're the two benchmarks that I would use. And also I think that there's always evidence when you're looking at success in terms of what the success looks like. So success is demonstrated by people's results and less so what people talk of in reference to their results. So then you observe, if you're in account management, does anyone that you're communicating with have a history of happy, successful clients or not? So then that means that you can kind of change your perception of, not change your perception, because it doesn't mean the advice is bad, but there's always evidence of, what's working and what isn't. So these are just things to keep in mind. Okay. So as we continue, I think that there's a couple of things that you should keep in mind as account managers. When you're an account manager, I think that it's a good mental model to think of yourselves as an account strategist rather than an account manager. The mental model it portrays is of someone who just manages the updates, and people don't value that role as such. They really, in the end, want to talk to the person who's the practitioner. So, what that means is that if you're a strategist, there's a couple of things that then begin to change if you're on calls. What do strategists do? Strategists are comfortable with the data. Strategists are comfortable with sharing the data. So let me just go ahead and share my screen. Let's walk through this together. Strategists are comfortable answering questions that are somewhat technical. Now, because we're a small organization fundamentally, a lot of roles have areas of convergence. So you don't singularly in small organizations be an account manager who just updates, because invariably you're a team of 5, a team of 10, small teams. So that means that people typically tend to share certain hats. So what that means is that at a small business level, especially when you're working with small businesses, they would expect you to be comfortable with the tools, expect you to be able to walk you through the tools. So practical demonstrations of that are you comfortable sharing your screen on a call, walking through documentation? Are you comfortable sharing chat GPT and say, well, let's just put it through the LLMs and let's see what it comes up with in regards to this positioning? Are you able to show dynamic thinking effectively? Now, dynamic thinking comes from after you have a foundation. So you need to build the foundation first. Otherwise, it then becomes problematic. So what is the foundation in this context? It's understanding the textbook as related to each of your roles. And that should be cross department. So for those of you, Sorab and Ishmael, if you've been here for more than 2 years and you're unable to really understand at a deep level what other departments do that are related to you, I think that that's an opportunity for you to step up. Because if you think about it by your own standard, you want to have a judgment or standard of yourself, say, well, yeah, of course I should know this. This is a fundamental part of what my company does. And we're a small company. We're not a huge organization that has lots of complex things happening. So I think from an internal standard perspective, I think it's really important to have working knowledge of how work that's related to your client, because invariably there'll be crossover. We do reputation management as well as lead generation for the same client. So I always wonder, how effectively can you do reputation management if you don't understand lead generation? If you give it in those terms, how effectively can you do lead generation if you don't have a handle on how the reputation management part of it actually works? It does. There's convergence. So getting a level of competency in both niches is going to help you. Okay. So account strategists, not account managers. And whether you need to then change your names and titles so it's helpful, and also it changes perhaps clients' perception of you, whatever you like. Okay. So a couple of then things that become important. So I'm gonna just kind of storm through some of these elements. So inline email responses are really important. So what I mean by that is that when clients send you several emails, it's more important that you respond in line to their emails. So I'll go ahead and just share my screen as an example of what that looks like. So if I just go to my email account and I'll find an email from somebody. Let's just imagine this guy sent me an email, right? And this guy's a client. People typically tend to respond like so, which is a reply above the fold. So here, hey man, thanks for reaching, whatever. What's better to reply is like this. And then you identify every single question or comment. So that's a question. For me, I have a question. Now, you don't necessarily always need to do the green part, becomes a bit laborious. But if the text size of text is different, or you can just go ahead and do it all at the end. But do you see the difference in the reply? Now it feels like you're having an actual conversation with someone as opposed to two separate streams of consciousness, because this is much more mimicking what you do in a real conversation. Oh, how you doing? Yeah, I'm great, man. How are you? Good, great. So I want to talk to you about a listicle on your website. Oh, just so I understand, Mr. Prospect, which website are you talking about? Do you see how it becomes different? Because Jason might have sent this email and then sent another 50 emails after this by the time that I reply. So then by the time I reply, if I'm just replying at the top, he might be like, I don't even remember what I said to you. So then he has to go back down, reread his email, look at your replies, understand if you've answered all of his questions, and it becomes quite messy. So a way to ensure that every answer is captured is to reply inline. Okay, so that's just something that's also important. So next things, as I just whistle through the final couple of minutes. So frame control in meetings is always important. What do I mean by frame control? You're the person who's leading the meeting. You're the person who's directing the conversation. You're the person who's talking about next steps, because you're the account manager. You're the account strategist. If they're leading, you're losing, because if they're leading, it means down the line they don't feel reassured. So you need to always anticipate questions, always be the first person to speak in the meeting, always talk about your plan for the call, but doing all of that without being rude. So still be conversational, still be friendly, but know that you're the one setting the agenda, because otherwise it sets you up for failure in those times where problems come in, and you all will, if you haven't yet, or have if you have already experienced it, where they ask for someone more senior, and that means that, oh, okay, they don't feel reassured by the replies that you've given. So that's just something to be super mindful of. Now, the other things also is that you need to prepare clients appropriately in respect of leads that will come or leads that aren't coming. So framing is always really important. So setting clients' expectations on a continuous basis is really important. So if a week goes by and a client hasn't got an update, it's a failure on the account management part. If a week goes by and a client hasn't received any leads, and then they say, oh, where are the leads? That's a failure of expectation setting on your part. Because otherwise, the problem is that you then create the burden of expectation in their mind, and they just expect leads to start coming in, for example, or results to start coming in from week 2. If you know historically, based upon this campaign, it's more likely to be week 4. You need to continually temper, which means not fan the flame, but reduce expectations on a continuous basis. So you always need to almost predict and manage their expectations on a continuous basis. When can I expect leads? Look, it's a case sometimes, Mr. Client, that this period is going to be more challenging because we're in the testing phase. So I don't want to set up false expectations. I'm really confident of the result we can generate, but the first 4 to 6 weeks, Mr. Client, it can be the case that we might not get any actual sales qualified leads. But I'm going to tell you why that's normal and what that means down the line as we progress. So if you have those difficult conversations with clients up front, they're less disappointed down the line and they understand what's happening. So if you're not setting expectations predictively, then you're not being a strategist. Does that make sense? Because that's thinking strategically. Whereas if you just you're managing emotions as they come up. But really what you want to do is you want to predict emotions. And based upon historical campaigns, you can probably predict the inflection points. You can predict how a campaign might go. So knowing that, you should prepare a client for what comes next. So that means that you need to be preemptive and proactive with updates and continuously remind them of that, because everyone in this world has got that desire for instant results. But that's not how the world works in terms of true results. People want an instant result, but you have to continually measure that expectation. Okay. So that is everything for today. Thanks, guys. See ya.